it's Elyse here at Bowman Library in our children's room with a whole new middle grade book spotlight. So for this week, we are going back to take a look at some more of my favorite books because there's just something about when you read a book that is just so awesome, you have to tell someone. So I picked 6 more of my favorites that I'm going to share with you, and hopefully maybe you'll get inspired to read one of these and they'll become one of your new favorites as well. So let's get started. Our first one is Because of Mr. Turup. So it's the start of 5th grade, and there is a new teacher in the school teaching 5th grade called Mr. Turup, and you start at the beginning of the school year, and as the story progresses, it's how the students in that class move through the school year. You get to learn so much about these students because each chapter is a different perspective from one of these 7 students. And you get to know them both inside and outside of school. And you start to realize, which we already kind of know, but what happens outside of school impacts what goes on inside of school as well. So while his students love his class, Mr. Turup's unconventional teaching methods and classroom management strategies are kind of questioned by some parents and school officials. And things kind of come to a head one fateful day on the playground in the winter when there is an epic snowball fight, and it kind of takes a little bit of a tragic twist to what should be a fun event. You will love this book. You will fall in love with each and every single one of these characters. You will hope that you could be in Mr. Turup's class. You'll be turning these pages as fast as you can. This is the first in a series. The last book in the series just came out and we just got it. So you can read this series from start to finish because you will want to know what happens to all of these characters because they are in every single book as well in this series. This is Because of Mr. Turup. Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. So this classic historical fiction book will leave you breathless and also with questions and thinking and just pondering about things that have happened in the world. It's 1943 in Denmark, and Anne-Marie doesn't really understand what is happening because her family takes in her best friend Ellen's family, and they're gonna live there, but they can't live there like normal. They have to live there in secret, that they're in hiding. No one can know they're living in Anne-Marie's apartment. And Anne-Marie starts to realize this is all because Ellen and her family are Jewish. And there are people in Denmark that they don't want any Jewish people living there. They're going around and they're rounding all these Jewish people up and they're going to relocate them, which basically means they're going to be forced to move somewhere and they're either going to be killed or they are going to be allowed to never return back to Denmark. As much as Anne-Marie's family though wants to protect Ellen's family, it does put them at risk as well because if they're caught hiding this family, they're going to be relocated as well. Because of this, Anne-Marie is on alert every single day, and every single thing that could possibly happen might have an epic consequence. This is based on true events that happened in Denmark, and when you find out what actually happens, you will be so amazed and you will want to then go research and find out more about 1943 in Denmark. Truly amazing. This is Number the Stars. Chasing Lincoln's Killer by James Swanson. Now, I love a good nonfiction history book that will keep you on the edge of your seat with all of the action and the adventure, and that's what this book does. This book is so good, and if you've watched enough of these, you know I love some good nonfiction. This book is no exception to that. So most of us, if not all of us, know that Abraham Lincoln, when he was president, he was assassinated by this guy named John Wilkes Booth while he was watching a play in Ford's Theater just right up the road in Washington, D.C. That's basically what we're told in school. Abraham Lincoln was shot by John Wilkes Booth and he killed Abraham Lincoln, but there was so much more to this story. It's almost like this borderline crazy story that when you read about it, you won't think this is what happened, but it was. Not only was there a plan to assassinate Abraham Lincoln, there was also a plan in this giant conspiracy between John Wilkes Booth and a ton of his friends that they were going to assassinate other government officials in Abraham Lincoln's group. But things kind of start to fall apart, and all of John Wilkes Booth's friends back out from these plans, and John Wilkes Booth decides he's going ahead with his end of the bargain no matter what anyone else does. And when it happens, it then leads to this 12-day crazy manhunt through all of northern Virginia, in which they are trying to find and track down John Wilkes Booth, but that is easier said than done. I cannot recommend this book enough. Again, if you love a good book that, even though you think you know what the deal is, Chasing Lincoln's Killer. The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis. Now, one of my biggest pet peeves with authors and books, especially in series, is when they write a series and then they feel this need to go back and write a prequel. Because after reading the series, I know what happened. So I kind of really don't like it when they decide to write a prequel because it's kind of not imaginative, but this book is actually an exception. So most of us, a good chunk of us, know The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe just because we've either read it or we've seen a movie. Well, this book was written after The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis, but it is so important to read because this is all about Diggory and Polly. They're next door neighbors in London, and they soon find themselves being friends during the summer because there's no one else their age to really hang out with. So they're upstairs exploring their attics that connect through a wall, and they find a secret entrance into Diggory's uncle's study one afternoon, and naturally they decide they need to sneak in there, and they find these weird yellow rings, and again, naturally they're gonna get curious, and Polly touches one of them, and when she touches this yellow ring, she disappears, she vanishes. Completely freaked out, Diggory goes and he finds his uncle and explains what happens, and he soon learns from his uncle that these rings that are in his study, you know, if someone touches them, they travel between worlds, and soon Diggory finds himself tricked into touching one of these rings, and he is somewhere else when he wakes up, and he finds Polly, and soon they find themselves on an adventure that they never thought possible. They're jumping between numerous worlds, and they're finding people and creatures that will change everything. This is the first book in the Narnia series, and this book is the basis for everything that happens in Narnia, including The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. There are so many light bulb moments that if you've read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you need to read this one because you'll have some moments where you'll be like, oh, it'll totally make sense. This is The Magician's Nephew. The Miscalculations of Lightning Girl. So 12-year-old Lucy is also known as Lightning Girl because when she was 8 years old, she was struck by lightning. And not only did she survive, but it instantly turned her into this uber math genius and also kind of gave her a case of OCD. Living with her grandmother after her parents have passed away, she has been homeschooled, but now her grandmother decides she's getting ready to enter 7th grade, and it's time that Lucy goes to school and starts to become more social with people in person and in her age group. But this is the last thing Lucy wants to do, so she makes a deal with her grandmother. She'll go through it for 7th grade, and once she completes it, then her grandmother's going to allow her to basically skip high school, and she's going to enroll in online college, and that's what she's going to do. She's just going to go to college. Well, school at the beginning is just what Lucy imagined it would be. You know, she's bullied, you know, she kind of plays dumb because she doesn't want everyone to know she's this math genius. She doesn't understand anything that anyone is talking about, and soon, though, she's forced to do a project with 2 other classmates, and they soon kind of start becoming friends, and they start to volunteer at an animal shelter together, and Lucy realizes that there is more to life than just math and online relationships. You will be along for this amazing and life-changing journey with Lucy, and there's even a cute, amazing dog that has a starring role in the Miscalculations of Lightning Girl. And our last one for this week is another nonfiction, because this one, again, is one of those books that so good that this story has to be told. So it's 1914, and there's this guy named Ernest Shackleton, and he's kind of famous for being a modern-day explorer. He decides that he wants to take a crew and he wants to sail down to Antarctica, and he wants to do what no one has ever done before. He wants to cross the entire continent of Antarctica from one side to the other on foot. So everyone's like, yeah, that's a great idea. So they get in this specially designed ship called the Endeavor, and he and this group of sailors get on this boat, and boats back then aren't like boats today. Like, this journey from Europe to Antarctica was going to take over a year just to get to Antarctica type deal. But on the way there, things naturally don't go as planned, and the ship soon becomes trapped in ice. Like, the ship cannot move. It's completely landlocked by this ice. And the whole crew then is now faced with these decisions that, what are we going to do to survive? Because we can't stay on this ship that's trapped in ice. So they get off the ship and they find themselves on these ice floes, basically these big moving chunks of ice. And they're facing sub-zero temperatures, there's food shortages, there's health crises and disease, and they are on these ice floes for 5 months before they reach Antarctica. And that's just only when things start, because they decide they need to take their own survival into their own hands, and they set off on an 800-mile journey in an open boat, hoping to find help. This real-life adventure survival story is one that will keep you on the edge of your seat, and you will not believe all the stuff that happens. Like, you're gonna read this and you're gonna be like, no, there's no way. This is completely made up. It's not. This whole thing actually happened. And one of the things that I love about this book is it is filled with like real photographs from everything that happened at that time. Like, they had a photographer there and he documented this whole thing. So you will actually get to see what actually took place as well as reading about it. So good. This is Shipwreck at the Bottom of the World. So these are just 6 of my favorites that we have here. These are the books that I would stay up until reading as fast as I could, you know, not getting as much sleep as I should, but needing to know what happens to these characters. So we encourage you to come on down, either check out one of these or check out another book that we have here that could become one of your new favorites. I hope you have a great week, and I hope you tune back next week for a whole new middle grade book spotlight.